As we're going to kick this off, bottom left-hand side of the map is going to be the blue Zerg player from ENCE Esports. This is Serral. Up against DnS in the top right-hand side. Let's see if he can pull off an upset. As we all know that Serral's ZvP is rather monstrous. Gateway being placed on the low ground. Intrigued to see what DnS does, because DnS is always very comfortable playing into the later stages of the game as well. Like, very comfortable playing into the later stages of the game. And, yeah, I always find that then very fun to see, because to me, DnS is always very much so this kind of macro player. But do you like to just go macro and play kind of late game against Serral? Well, I mean, that's kind of the difficulty of it. I do remember a game I cast of Serral DnS a while back, and DnS really did not deter or defer from his usual kind of game plan of, you know, he went into carries, he went late game, and it was like a 35-40 minute game, and Serral won out. But he was not afraid to go there. You know, he wasn't afraid to stand up and say, hey, look, this is how I want to play. This is where I want to go. And I know a lot of Protoss obviously like that. They're like, well, you know, Skytoss is really good. But obviously, Serral is one of the best late game players that, you know, out there as a Zerg, right? His late game is truly incomparable to most others. It is one of Serral's probably biggest strengths, and even still, his late game is just super good, and especially in this matchup, the late game army control is extremely difficult to pull off. But Serral does it somewhat effortlessly a lot of the time. I'm sure it's not effortlessly, but it looks effortless on our end. So, yeah, it gets me interested about this series, because then, like I say, does DnS play like that? Does he try and throw in some tricks and kind of end this series sooner? What approach do you take? And I mean, I guess it's always an interesting question when you ask what approach do you take when you're playing against Serral, because nobody probably has a good idea what the best approach is against Serral, because Serral's just that freaking good. He's even hiding a Ling in the main base right now. And he's going to be able to use that to scout, so that's amazing, because you can actually start pulling his Overlord back. And if you can pull his Overlord back and save an extra Overlord against a Stargate opener, that'd be amazing. Seeing a Twilight Council opener super quickly would be amazing too. He knows the pylon is up there. I don't know why the Ling went low ground necessarily, but he gets a scout on the Twilight instantly. That is so annoying. That, like, actually just sucks. But I don't know what else to say about that. Like, that actually is just sad. Twilight gets seen right away. Robo facility starts up now, and we do see a couple of probes producing too. So Twilight Robo, obviously the choices here. The first one, the most common one, would be Glaives, and I think it is Glaives. 2 workers on each gas is almost always Glaives, because you don't need all 3 workers on gas if you're going to go for a Glaives opener. So that's the easiest way of telling if this is Glaives or whether you're just going to be seeing maybe a Dark Shrine or so instead. There's our 2 gateways just building on the main base. So getting that up and rolling. As you do see our Robo facility coming in on the naturals. Just getting that up and going. Let's see, Prism will come out of this, and let's see what Serral's response looks like against this 4-gate Glaives. A build everyone's very familiar with. The build Serral at this point has played thousands of times, or played against thousands of times, I'm sure. Let's see what the heck DnS can do with it. Let's see if you can somehow catch Serral off guard. Maybe a little bit underprepared, or maybe just able to outposition him with the Adepts. Those are the few things you're hoping for, and obviously behind this you do have some options as to what you go into as a follow-up. There is a more aggressive option where you try and hit an Immortal Adept timing if you do well with the first Adepts. Obviously, typically, you take a 3rd base behind this at some stage as well. Let's see what he wants to do, and let's see if he'll even be allowed to, because Serral might just... If he can hold these Adepts very well with the Ling Roach, he might commit into a setup which gives him like a big Ling Roach counterattack as well. So right now, making a lot of units. Let's see how these Adepts will do, as Glaives ain't done just yet. The Glaives is a bit later than usual. So I guess the idea here is you're hitting... Usually you hit with like 8 Adepts at like 425 to 430. This is not going to be that many more. It's like, I mean, the warp-ins on time for it just have been 8 initially, but then you didn't have Glaives. So maybe Chrono Boost on probes a little bit instead, maybe a little bit more focus elsewhere. I'm not 100% sure, but you know, the timing of this initially is a little slow. As DnS will force units, of course, has a worker lead. There's already an Immortal on the way. And the question I have is just, do you really set that up for aggression, or is there something else at play here, you know? Are you just thinking about, ooh, I need to defend in the future? Or are you thinking like, hell yeah, I'm ready for my next stage of this? As no, don't lose the prism to the queens. That'd be a disaster. Even taking hits on it like this just means that prism is so much weaker and so much more easily taken down in, you know, in a moment it flies in. So that's kind of rough. That's the sort of thing you want to be avoiding when you're playing against Serral. You need like every advantage you can get when you're playing against Serral, and letting your prism take free hits, that definitely ain't it, as the Adepts honestly so far have done nothing. And Serral just takes this now as a chance to tech up. Lair on the way, plenty of drones on the way. Just going to set himself up much better into the rest of this game as the few Adepts coming to the top. Immortal coming through. And just going to be seeing our Lings and Roaches moving around on that right-hand side. Getting a couple more Extractors still coming through. The Creep Team is coming up. And just going to be seeing our Nexus. Still building on the third base. And a couple of Adepts and those Immortals immediately there. And the one thing is, as Sentry's warping now as well, DnS just does not have a lot of future tech. He didn't get another upgrade off the Twilight. Now he just starts the Forge as well, but you know what I mean. It feels like we're very stuck on Adept Immortal, and to me that's a composition that pushes and tries to deal damage, and it's just sat at home. Serral's even going to make a Baneling Nest, and that's going to be incredible against these Adepts. So unless you can find a really good way to trade out these Adepts, I feel like they are going to just suck in a fight against these Banelings, and then Serral might just be able to overwhelm you with one of the first pushes he goes for. We will see. Sentry Immortal and Adept around that top side. The few Lings around the left, and the Warp Prism through the center as well is going to unload, and a couple of Creep Teamers will be denied. So the Warp Prism has stayed somewhat active, but I mean, at this point, guys, we have lost 4 Lings against a 4-gate glaive opener. I mean, that's obviously just not a lot of stuff lost, and that's where DnS will struggle because, I mean, for, you know, that amount of units lost, it's just he's just not done much, and now his army is not exactly brilliant for being 7.5 minutes in the game, when Serral has just been able to more or less fully focus on whatever he wants to do. Obviously, he did cut drones at a certain point to defend, but, you know, since then, Serral's been kind of a free Zerg, doing as he wishes. No stopping this guy from doing whatever he wants to do. Full of Adepts here caught. They shade just to the right, and they avoided death for a whole extra 3 seconds. Hallucination keeping up the scouting, at least from DnS, so he won't be caught off guard by anything. Serral's morphing in Ravages, 66 drones, Ling, Roach, Ravager, Bane all in. At least heavy pressure, right? Maybe behind this you can drone up if you do enough damage. Bane Speed ain't ready yet. I would imagine we wait for Bane Speed. That will mean, the Colossus is going to be out here anyway. Serral backs up. Adept's in the main base. Does he really back up, though? Like, is he actually going to, like, deal with this? I don't think it deters him from fighting. There's no way you would still be on 66 drones right now if you're not going to go for this fight. Bane Speed is now finished, so there's not really much harm done in waiting. And here we go. Obviously, there's a few force fields available. These force fields have to be very, very good. The Ravagers are going to hope to bile down those force fields, give the Banes some easier access through. Force fields so far have been great, can't fault them. As now the Banes get up, though, and this is where these Adepts really just don't do very much. Roach Ravage are going to brute force their way forward. On top of the Immortals already, the Super Battery will be depowered, as the only pylon connected to it has been taken down. And one Colossus is all that remains for DnS, as Serral just comes on through. And oh no, the Zealots that got warped in, well, they didn't even have charge, but they get connected in on by Banelings, and so that's a one-sided story as well. Bottom left corner of the map, the blue Zerg convincing in the first map is going to be Serral. Up against DnS, our red Protoss in the upper right-hand corner. The thing is as well, like, it wasn't just that he went Adepts and then, you know, didn't do much. He then also built, you know, Immortal Adept Sentry, and then also still didn't do anything. And then you're just not playing the right kind of composition for how late in the game you're getting, and, you know, to me that is something you just... I mean, against Serral, you just can't do that sort of stuff, because he just knows how to counter it. And like I say, ZvP for Serral really has been just a very good matchup as well lately, so... if there's a matchup I expect him to lose tonight, probably isn't going to be the versus Protoss one, I have to imagine. A few people asking about Reno and Clem and stuff. Reno, Clem, Heromarine, all invited from Europe, all have higher ESL points than Serral. So Serral really is the big player that didn't get an invite. Neeb took the 4th non-Korean invite as he has more points than Serral as well in the ESL Pro Tour. Obviously, as an ESL Pro Tour event, if you're going to invite people, you must invite via the ESL Pro Tour rankings. You can't just invite wildly and just be like, well, we want Serral. No, it doesn't work like that. But to be fair, I think everyone kind of... like, it's funny, like, we all get excited to watch these games, right? But it's... I feel like, does anyone in chat not expect Serral to qualify tonight? Like, is anyone in chat saying, like, oh, no, I think Serral doesn't make it through. I think Serral's just going to be, like, you know... I think he gets knocked out. Because I don't see that at all. So it's funny, because we're all so excited to watch these games, and me too. I love watching Serral. But I still feel like it's already kind of a foregone conclusion that he probably is going to qualify. I guess maybe that's why we're watching for... Are we watching for the upset, though? I'm watching to see Serral qualify, though, you know? It's just fun watching him play, and I feel like that's what's so great about him as a player. Like, he plays a style that is just fun to watch. It is just good, strong, solid Starcraft. And that is obviously very, very entertaining. And that's something I can get behind. Morlocks in the chat basically says what I just said. Wish we could see Serral in cups more often, even if he stomps his opponent. It's a thing of beauty and worth watching. Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, as well, I guess so far tonight, it's not really been a stomp either, right? We had a... the Gumiho series was actually a bit more competitive than I thought it was going to be. Game 2, at least. It was, like I say, there was moments where I saw Gumiho maybe had some chances and stuff. Hey, Zablonky, thank you so much for the 19-month resub. Keep being awesome. You too, buddy. Thank you so much for the 19 months. 2 adepts come in. And just going to go shading through a little bit. A couple more queens are continuing out as our warp gate is going to be finishing on the Cybernetics core very, very soon. The Oracle is going to fly down to the bottom right, and a couple of queens just going to be hanging around on the third a little bit. There are the queens, put some damage out. The Oracle takes some hits. And these 2 adepts show up on the bottom side where they're just going to recall instantly. He actually tries to bring the Oracle back in, but Serral immediately switched back to the Oracle targeting, making sure this Oracle don't get anywhere. And as Oracle number 2 is finished, do we queue up Oracle 3 while we go double Stargates? Off the back of double Oracle, it's actually a little bit of a mind... It's a little bit unusual. Usually you go Oracle Void Ray. Usually you go Oracle Void Ray because the Void Ray denies the Overlords and you deny the vision of Serral, so he doesn't get to see the follow-up. Ooh, a Fleet Beacon quickly too. Are we just going to go like straight at Carriers here? Like double Oracle into double Carrier? It would seem so. I'm always a fan of this. I don't know if... I mean, Tempest's a possibility as well, right? That's one thing we have seen with the Fleet Beacon and a second Stargate more recently too. But DnS always was a big fan of the double carrier build. And then building into a ground army behind it rather than going into like just straight up Sky Toss. We'll see if that's something he wants to do here. If he wants to maybe try that style out. Like I say, he wasn't afraid in the past of trying to stand up to Serral with straight up macro stuff. Let's see what we can do, is we do have our couple Oracles coming in. Queen taking a bit of damage. Now that Rotron is going to be finishing from Serral, and the last still coming through. Again, a couple more queens are coming up, and the carrier production has started. So it is indeed carriers. Like I say, if I had to really like make a guess and say like, oh yeah, I thought, you know, if I had to say carriers or Tempests, but DnS I would always guess carriers. I think it's just much more kind of his style. Something, like I say, he's been comfortable and confident with in the past, and something he's been doing for a long time, even more so than the more recent trend of like, oh yeah, it's cool to build a second Stargate and a Fleet Beacon, which has been, like I say, a bit of a trend lately, maybe. So yeah, for DnS, not really surprised. There's a Forge, and plus 1 air weapons too. Like I say, I do wonder if we go into a ground army at all, or if he will just kind of stick very purely to the Sky Toss. In the past, like I say, he was quite happy to play kind of a pure, you know, a ground army behind it, but times have also changed as well, so maybe DnS takes a build that he used to like and adapts it more into this meta, which you can just go pure Sky Toss on as well. So in that regard, some possibility is Adepts make their way in. 3, 4 drones? 5? I mean, can't complain about 5 drone kills for 3 Adepts. Adepts are the kind of unit which right now as well definitely don't scale as well later into the game. So you're at the point where trading out adepts for drones is just going to be good because those adepts aren't going to add much defense at home. Having 3 adepts at home at this point isn't going to be the make or break of you keeping a base alive usually. Maybe in like the very rare occasion, but yeah, like I say, not most of the time. There's a robo facility coming down. Flux veins too. So he's going to do the carriers into voids with disruptors. So like I say, it's a bit more. It's still like a more modern follow-up with this carrier style. So disruptor support. I mean, here come the first carriers. Serral, plenty of queens. Mobile with the creep. Has got an infestation pit building and already finished a spire. So that's where we currently stand. There's a little bit of creep spread denied at the front. Wing count is just so good. These first carrier interceptors don't do anything, so an instant pushback. Serral was just very, very well prepared for that, as we do see our queens able to deny that. Just going to see our +1 missiles finishing. Carapace is coming up on the Evo chamber as well. Twilight Council building from DnS, so getting that up and running. As our carriers continue to come on through. Oracles are going to pick away at a few more Zerglings, so a few more Lings being picked off here. Serral is really just happy to, entertain the late game options, doesn't he? Pathogen glands, flyer carapace. He has 0 issues saying, "Oh, you want to play carries and stuff? Okay. Welcome to the late game." Like I say, Serral, we know he's just so comfortable in that late game. That shouldn't ever really come as a surprise. If you know Serral, you know that he's comfortable there in general. So it's cool to see it though. Witches make their way to the upper left. Gonna go in. Zealot pylon gonna be cleared out. It's at this sort of point as well where Serral doesn't want to just lose the roaches, but trading out the roaches is not necessarily a bad idea. Obviously, as roaches get traded out, you put yourself into a bit of a spot where you just got more free supply to rebuild off of. Although right now he's not maxed. He just spent a bunch of money on static defense. I mean, just look at the production tab. Upgrades aplenty, pretty much anything you can think of. Bane Nest and an Ultra Cavern. Static defense, infestors. Bit of everything, Structures, upgrades, units, attack, defense. Serral spending all of his money on preparation. If DnS could pull off like one big attack as Serral was still getting a lot of this like established, that could be a killing move. But it's hard to pull off. Maybe with like +2 air weapons, but by then I actually think Serral is going to have a lot of these things coming into fruition anyway. At that point, I feel like he's already going to be feeling rather comfortable, Some roaches hanging around. Just going to be seeing our Greater Spire still coming up. Another Spire as well. Is all coming out right now. Adrenal Gland is going to be finishing soon, and again, Melee and Carapace is coming up as well. This Roach Lane Force jumps on a couple of Zealots, taking those down. And a few of these Banelings back down through to the center also. Overseer down the right-hand side, and just going to be having +3 air weapons on the way up now from DnS also. It's getting that up and running. Blink is coming through, +2 attack is coming through. Couple of additional high tempo, all on the way out. And 4 more Broodlords building up right here. So, again, all of that through. Again, 6 spores coming out. Kindness playing. Settling down for the late game, friends. Settling down for the late game. Again, that is going to be something where Serral is very comfortable. The thing is with late game Zerg as well is that naturally they just don't attack, right? You build up a round stack defense, attacking in generally makes your life much more difficult. And again, if Serral's comfortable, he will just let himself build up into a rather large bank, and he will let DNS do the attacking. Oh my god, that's horrendous. I don't know why the High Templar were in this corner, but it was the worst place they could have possibly been. Caught by a roach run by. Oh no. Well, that hurts. I mean, they were just full of storm energy as well, right? Like, I don't think they were fully maxed on energy, but they were close to it. They at least had double storm available each. So that's kind of crazy. And that's just already something that hurts so much. I mean, we talked about trading roaches out maybe a little bit for more late game units. That's a very good way to trade them out. Talk about finding an efficient fight. Of course, at some point you do want to maybe think about keeping some amount of ground army up and running as well in case of zealot counterattacks too, but at the moment it seems like Serral is not giving a crap about that. He's just kind of going for this. He's even made some stag defense and cancelled it to get past the 200 supply marker. Maybe not the best time because this army of, he's going to trade out these units anyway. I guess it got him a few more Broodlords in the moment, which maybe is what it's all about. DNS is just going to pull the trigger. I don't like it. He barely has enough storms for what he wants to do here. There's a lot of Neuros available right now, and they're going to get the Archons. The Archons are going to do splash damage to the Interceptors. The Interceptors are going to drop more quickly than they should be. The High Templar all got taken down. The Storms were pretty much ineffective, and Serral just completely crushes this. I mean, it feels like DNS just got almost frustrated that Serral finds another great pick off the counterattack, got the +3 air weapons building. And DNS is like, right, scrap this, I'm going. And so I was like, okay, cool. I mean, you couldn't have really you couldn't have sat there and slow-mo kind of set up a fight any better than that for Serral. The microbial shrouds covered everything, storms did nothing. The neural parasites hit all 3 of the Archons at the front. Their splash damage aids so much in fighting the Protoss then. And obviously none of the infestors couldn't be reached by anything. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to make a much better fight. At least one where the Protoss also wanted to be there or something, you know what I mean? Just gonna be seeing the Zealots moving around the right side and just having the Prism down to the bottom corner. Some Banes are gonna find Zealots. Man, this is rough. Even your counterattacks again absolutely destroyed as DNS. Well, Immortals out in the bottom right actually might be a bit more hopeful for doing something here, but let's see what the Zealots do, as there are a few Banes in the bottom corner. He's posturing with the army on the left side at the same time. Looks like this is going to be cleaned up somewhat, although I guess additional Zealots warping in might shift that a little bit. Fungal's already coming down beautifully on the left, and these High Templar are getting caught. These Archons are stuck. That means the Broodlings are catching up, and they are going to start getting some pickoffs as well. So Serral is able to push back on the left side too. As Zealot Immortal is actually maybe going to kill off the bottom right corner, which is obviously pretty nice if you can kill that bottom right hand corner off. That'd be pretty great as we do just come through. That hatchery goes down. Corruptors are going to chase the Prisms. The Prism gets picked off as well. I mean, recall it out a couple of the Immortals and stuff. Not bad. I mean, you killed off a base. You can't really complain about that as DNS as far as trading out some units goes. That was not bad at all. He is still fairly close to being maxed out. Obviously, he's sat on the 5 bases, and Serral is sat on more or less every base he'll have in this game apart from 1. He'll probably take that 9 o'clock position as well, and that will be his final base of the game. Unless he starts taking DNS's expected bases. It's the fact that the Protoss is then A, on less bases, and B, on less resources, on more resources lost as well, so trading less efficiently. That's where the problem really arises for DNS. That's where you run into some real trouble is... Got a little abduct off, although this wasn't the prettiest of moves from Serral. Over on this right-hand side. Tectonic destabilizes, building on the fleet beacon, by the way, as the +3 air weapons is still about to complete. Just having... I think he just stormed a Burrow Zergling, but it did hit the Immortals' barriers off and some of their shields. DNS moves more central to defend the right side, but then he's going to lose the left side base, so what do you really achieve? You're going to maybe take a base, but to lose one of your fresher mining bases? Feels like DnS has never really known where he wants to be with his army, honestly, all game long. You know, when those roaches caught these few High Templar there, I mean, that was obviously a bit of a freak accident as well, but then the roaches on the right side hit that cybercore. Like, he's maybe not known necessarily, maybe saying he doesn't know where he wants his army all game long, but he's not being very aware of where Serral is all game long a lot of the time. And you just need to be aware of these smaller attacks as well, because they can be devastating. They can do substantial damage if you let them. And at this stage, many smaller attacks have been allowed to do substantial damage. Just gonna see how Ling Bane gonna get picked away. Just gonna see how Corrupt is still hanging around in the top center. Broodlords go make their way to the upper right-hand corner. So away they go. Ultras continuing through as a couple of probes. Just gonna get picked away at the greatest spy out. Getting those brews up, and they're gonna go forward. Picking away at this as we get one more Archon kill, and Nexus gets cancelled. Tempest doing alright as we do have a couple more creep teamers still pressing forward. Just got the spore after spore going down. I mean, hey, nice to see DnS and some damage dealt. He is going to be obviously re-established on the left side. This right side denied by Broodlord. So all of a sudden the Broods are just on their own on the right. And actually going to find a bunch of probes alongside a Nexus kill. So 12 workers dead. Yeah, losing stack defense on the left, but it feels like Serral is really ready to go for this. He's looking for maybe... I was thinking maybe he was actually looking for a fungal there to kind of keep those Tempests locked in a forward place. Nothing so far. Revelation also doesn't hit any infestors, so that would be nice. If you could get the Revelation off, it'd be pretty fantastic, because once the Revelation's down, you know where those infestors are. You can just pick your fight much more, you know, with a lot more knowledge then, and just pick a much better fight typically, as these Broods are going to just keep on going, and the Archon and 2 Immortals ain't going to do much about it, so... That is going to be Serral, actually clearing up a few units there. I wonder if that clears the supply a bit for DnS to actually build more useful units. This big fight going to break out. A lot of the Queens can't actually join the fight as Microbial Shrouds go down on where the Ultras started, but I guess not where the Ultras end up, man. Serral is still almost max and has only rebuilt 1 Viper. I mean, that's kind of telling you how this fight is going, right? He just killed so much and lost so little. Yeah, I mean, obviously he's losing a little bit now. And now he starts his rebuild as well, as, you know, Microbial Shroud just makes it so these carriers don't really do anything. It's going to be seeing the Mothership getting taken down by the Corruptors, so the Corruptors able to knock that out of play. Well, there's barely any carrier interceptors left over, but there's also not a lot of other stuff in general for DnS. That said, I mean, maybe still enough to be a little scary, and cause Serral to still want to play this slower than you might expect. Like I say, Serral will never be the player who is caught attacking too soon in a game where he's winning, I don't think, you know. If he's very comfortable about his position, he's just going to be the guy that lets it play on a little bit rather than letting it, rather than being the guy that's like, okay then, let's go, I want to be out of here right now. Reminds me a lot of Snoot in that regard, actually. And I remember Snoot always, I think he said in an interview at some point, I can't remember when he said it, but I promise he said it. I think it was in like an interview where he just said, I always like to play games out slowly when I'm ahead, because, I didn't fly all the way to this tournament. I spent all this time flying to a tournament, not to, to compete. Why would I risk losing for the sake of saving 5 minutes of my time when I'm at the tournament, sort of thing? And I always thought that was, obviously, people aren't flying out around places right now, but the idea is there. Why save those 5 minutes when your job is to kind of be here, winning the game in the best, safest possible way? And for Serral, he thinks that is absolutely just letting the game go longer as well. So in that regard, it kind of reminds you of Snoot, just because Snoot always had those kind of longer kind of playouts as well when ahead, staying ahead, and doing the right things to maintain advantages and all of that. He took the top right base, Serral. I like that. I think, obviously, DnS does not have a lot of control on the right side. Has a lot of control left side, so this base is harder to take. The problem is, once DnS moves right side to take this base, then Serral can take this base rather freely as well, and that's why I was going to say maybe I would have liked to see DnS maybe try and take this base. Yes, it's kind of close to the Zerg stuff, but if you don't take it, you're going to have problems because you have to go over here. You still need to defend this base. So fully focusing left side right now might just be the better option overall. Resources lost 10,000 in favor of Serral as fight after fight has been extremely good for him. Spine crawlers still coming up, plenty of drones still in production. Serral just finds a new base to settle down on. Gonna send a few ultras up here. Potential attack in, honestly. I mean, there's not a lot around. All of the attention is still on the left. And if you obviously break through into this natural, into this main, you are going to find significant production to deny. In that regard, I feel like Serral's almost being a little bit too cautious because I don't think there's anything to lose by sending a couple of ultras into the natural. Unless he really feels like he needs them to fight over here, which, well, perhaps. Maybe. Just going to be seeing our, well, army of DnS kind of adventuring forward just as he's taking that left base. I'm surprised he's suddenly wanting to fight. This is a good storm, though. Storms are in the right place on top of the microbial shroud, so he is going to get splashed where the queens kind of want to just sit and stand. Forgers have activated Prismatic, and the Corruptors basically say, well, we don't want to fight as long as that's a thing. We once again neural the Archons. The Archons make such a big such a deal breaker on this one. I mean, you are just able to do so much damage with those against the Protoss army. I can't believe you found the Archons amongst everything else there, right? There were so many units in that fight. To find the Archons with the Neurals? I feel like a lot of us would have absolutely misclicked onto something else as we try and protect some broods, as we push on forward. Jungle on these few Stalkers. I mean, the Ultras actually, funnily enough, were just up there, and this is maybe one of those times these Ultras were actually kind of needed as these Stalkers blink in. This is where you actually do need an anti-ground force, and that's what the Broodlords will, the Ultralists will provide. As the Corruptors kind of come on through, the last carriers are going down. The Tempests will be chased. Tempests on their own don't really last very long. And obviously Stalkers alone aren't going to do much either. Serral does convince us, convincingly take us into a Game 2 victory. I was going to say, Serral convinced